So let's talk a little bit more about driving a successful continuous improvement program. And we've kind of gone there now, right, with the conversation that says, okay, where we are is great. We want to make sure we have it set in a dynamic way. But what we want to do is continue to improve that in an organized, scalable way. And Aaron, I know this is a big part of your core about what you grew up with in Toyota. And maybe you can talk a little bit about how you're seeing, your customers or specific programs being successful in that.
Yeah, well, first of all, I like to define or broaden the definition of continuous improvement because in most people's minds, continuous improvement is just this scheme or campaign of collecting people's ideas and suggestions. And while everybody agrees that it's a good thing to do, unfortunately, it's never an urgent thing for most companies. They see continuous improvement, that flavor of continuous improvement as a nice to have. Whenever all my other problems and issues and fires in the factory are solved, I'll do continuous improvement. Well, no. In my definition, continuous improvement embarks any sort of problem solving and troubleshooting and fixing issues in your factory. That is the culture of continuous resolution, continuous improvement of your operations, continuous troubleshooting. So continuous improvement is not only about doing a once-a-year campaign or some Kaizen workshops where you incentivize people to participate in a given scope of issues and reward them and so on. That's a good thing, and it has its place in transforming a culture. But ultimately, you got to set up the mechanisms so that people are continuously knowing the standard, so they can identify whenever there's a gap versus the standard, identify an issue, identify a problem, and know what to do to solve it. That is continuous improvement. And that happens truly continuously, not just on events, not just on campaigns, not just once a year when you're giving people rewards. So the main recommendation I would give to set up this continuous improvement, continuous troubleshooting, continuous problem solving program of your company, which is an absolute necessity, is you got to, first of all, make sure that everybody is enabled to be a true problem solver in your organization, not just the experts and not just the green belts, not just the black belts, but every single person having the basics of solving problems. And one way to do that, one thing that, again, enables that is connecting them with each other and have given them access to knowledge, access to previous experiences, access to previous problems, so that they don't have to reinvent the wheel every single time. And so they can collaborate across departments, even across factories. So in this side, the technology aspect is a great enabler and a great catalyst for that continuous improvement culture.
Yeah, I think that's sort of having this library and having this resource center of learnings alongside of the standards that we were just talking about. And then, Mike, what have you seen in terms of, it's great to talk about sort of these examples, but it's also wanted to make sure that it's the people that have the right knowledge, right? So there's also a sort of a checks and balances there in terms of you want the people that are setting a new standard or doing things to be qualified to be able to do so.
Yeah, and this exactly, Ralph. It also touches on cross training, but initially, I think when a process changes, how do you make sure that everybody knows that, right? A new robot has a software update. There's a new machine. These things require an update in terms of the capabilities of the workforce to be able to get the job done with this new approach, and to make sure that they can quickly learn it, and that there's a dashboard that shows that they're capable of doing it. So I think it's knowing what to do and then making sure people are doing it need to go hand in hand.
Don, maybe you can, I'm really curious to what the conversation is like when you're implementing a SWIPE guide and you've worked with companies that are doing this digitization of their processes and standards, and how do they approach, in a successful example, approach the concept of, what, we know this will change, or we know that, you know, like we have a way that is going to make sure that if the standard changes, it changes appropriately. How's that conversation go in a successful program that you're familiar with?
Yeah, I think it's important to at least have the feedback loop. So when you talk about standard work, if you have the standard work, people follow it. If it's a work instruction or a checklist, that you capture the feedback from the process and try to incorporate it again in the standards. That makes it a lively and dynamic endeavor. And that's what we see in the companies that are successful, connecting sort of standard work and continuous improvement. I would say one of the very important things there is also the culture. So I think Eric touched upon it a bit in terms of skills, problem solving skills, but it's also the culture. Like, do people feel empowered when they contribute ideas? Are they feeling heard in that sense? Because if that is not the case, it will never fly. So I would say the cultural and change management aspect of it is pretty important, to really give the people in the front line the feeling that if they identify things that can be improved, that it's actually also incorporated, or even better, that they have the opportunity to incorporate it in their daily work. So again, I would say empowerment culture, it is sort of a big container, but for me, it's always the success lies in these sort of softer things in the implementation.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. And I think that actually leads well into the next sort of topic that we have about collaboration and how that's changed. And I think that collaboration really is not limited to just, you know, kind of a horizontal collaboration, but I think the collaboration of the vertical collaboration between leadership and supervisors, managers, and frontline workers has changed quite a bit too, in terms of, and I think the pandemic is somewhat of a catalyst to that, because not everybody's in the same place all the time. So there has to have been more formalization on some of this collaboration that I've seen. So Eric, you were talking a little bit about, you know, yeah, somebody observes a standard or somebody observes something that's out of standard. How do they find a way to address it or fix it and make that a systemic thing where it's like, hey, we're turning learnings into new standards?
Yeah, so I want to emphasize again the word collaboration and just reflect a little bit on what it means, because it gets thrown around a lot. And you look at the Latin roots of collaboration, working together with somebody. And very often in manufacturing environments, supply chain environments, and any other work environments as well, not just industrial, there's these walls where work gets defined in one place and get thrown over the wall to the other side, and then they figure out how to do it. And this is especially true in industrial settings, right? Where we design a product, it gets thrown over to industrial engineering. They design how it's going to be built. Then it gets thrown into the factory. Now you build it, and now you run the factory. And then the frontline operator has been thrown some standards, and now you execute it, and so on. Whereas actually the collaboration between frontline workers, frontline supervisors, industrial engineers, maintenance, quality, even engineering and design, they can work together on improving those standards. And actually, one of the best ways to collaborate, to work together, is on finding root causes of problems, especially chronic problems, things that repeat, and so on. So that's one good opportunity, because it's not just like, let's get along together better. It's like, okay, let's put the tools in place and the communication systems in place so we can work together on solving these issues at the root cause and getting the knowledge from the front line down to the office tower with the engineers and so on. And it is clear that technology is an enabler for eliminating friction and enabling that sort of collaboration.
I think these silos are everywhere, and technology helps create tunnels.